In my past life, Qinwei, the Marquis of Weiyuan, and I were the couple everyone envied. Our love was mutual and unquestioned. Receiving a single tear from him before my death, I was content. Yet, upon reopening my eyes, I heard he had come to propose. But this time, the one he sought to marry was not me. I rushed to the main hall. Through the crowd, I saw Qinwei take my cousin's hand, solemnly vowing to the elders. I know Yunyang is not as socially adept as Mianyang, but I will protect her in every way from now on, turning away to hold back tears. I couldn't help but ask myself, was everything before just a dream? Yet that dream felt so real. I remember when Qinwei was 19, his mother's body not yet cold. His father brought a stepmother into the home. As the ancients said, filial piety can crush a person. Even the emperor could not escape the constraints of propriety, let alone Qinwei. I still recall his sorrowful face as he told me, "Mianyang, I am not living well at all." My heart ached deeply hearing this. So, I was determined to marry him. After our wedding, we became the couple everyone admired. He fought valiantly abroad, earning merits, and never forgot to petition for my imperial mandate title with each promotion. I managed domestic affairs internally and socialized with noble women externally, clearing countless obstacles for Qinwei. Later, Qinwei was enfeoffed as Marquis Dingyuan by the emperor, and he praised me, a master of social grace. I disliked the words' underlying derogatory connotation and frowned. Yet Qinwei loved me above all else. Even our pair of children could not compare. Every time he returned, he rushed straight to my courtyard, unable to restrain himself from covering my eyes and planting a fervent kiss on my lips until our hair turned white. Qinwei never took a single concubine or maid. Even at my deathbed, he shed a scalding tear. I instinctively reached to touch where the tear had traced. Once we grew old together, our bodies no longer youthful. He lay paralyzed in bed, I wrinkled and white-haired, yet the tender, smooth texture beneath my fingers now abruptly shattered the dream. This year, I remained unmarried, and Qinwei was nearly 18. On this day in my past life, he had just been promoted. With spring winds favoring his swift steed, he viewed all Chang'an's blossoms in a day. Meeting my cousin at the Willow Pavilion beyond the city walls, they became confidants, sharing every thought without reservation. From her, he learned of my cherished status at home, bright and vivacious. Thus, during every festival, Qinwei would invite both of us sisters, along with 3 or 4 others to accompany. I wasn't without suspicion that Qinwei fancied my cousin, but he never showed the slightest hint. Even when my cousin was tormented to death by her in-laws, he merely replied indifferently, "I see." Later, it was learned her in-laws refused to arrange her burial. It fell to me to beg Qinwei to retrieve her ashes. Yet why, in the same year, same month, same day, did he come to propose to her? The hall buzzed with excitement. Qinwei and my cousin were the center of attention, surrounded by jesting guests. Grandmother, advanced in years, simply asked Qinwei, "When do you plan to wed?" Qinwei's expression remained calm, his reply measured and unhurried. He only said he wished to marry my cousin soon. I watched intently. I noticed he was very different from before. In my past life, the 18-year-old Qinwei hadn't yet been worn down by his stepmother and still acted somewhat immaturely. When we went boating on the lake, he always liked to splash water at me, then turn to pick lotus flowers for my cousin. At the lantern festival, he'd let my cousin choose first from the lanterns. He guessed correctly, stuffing all the leftovers into my hands. In that moment, everything became clear to me. He must have had the same dream as I did. Now that the dream has shattered, it's time for both of us to wake up. My cousin and Qinwei's marriage was arranged hastily, with the wedding date rushed. The family was busy preparing her dowry and had no time to keep an eye on me. These days, I've been restless and troubled. The glaring red decorations around the house made it hard to breathe. So, when my mother went to the temple to burn incense, I bribed the gatekeeper, disguised myself as a man, and slipped out. I rode aimlessly through the bustling streets. I gazed out the window. It was late spring once again, with gentle breezes rustling the flowering trees, scattering petals all over the ground. I recall many spring days in my dreams, just like today. Love at first sight when we met, heart fluttering when we met again, a knowing smile when we grew closer. Shen Miao, clever and proud all my life, was defeated by Chen Wei's false affections and wasted my sincere love. Yunyang, the flowers ahead are even more beautiful. Let me take you there. Through blurred eyes, I seemed to hear Chen Wei's voice. I hurriedly wiped my tears and chased after two figures that looked just like them for a long time. But in the end, I still lost them. Seeing no one around, I crouched down and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. You liar. If you didn't like me, why didn't you just say so? After venting my anger fiercely, I staggered back, passing by a lotus pond. I stood for a while beside a fisherman, watching the duckweed covering the water, and said, "No one tends to this place. The fish are suffocated by the weeds." The fisherman turned at the sound and actually called my name. So the forest spirit from earlier was Miaonyang in disguise. That's when I recognized him. Lu Ping, the fourth prince who died young and full of unfulfilled promise. I had no personal interest in the fourth prince whatsoever. In my past life, I'd only studied his preferences to smooth Chen Wei's official career path. I learned he oversaw personnel appointments in the Ministry of War and had a keen eye for talent. To ensure Chen Wei's credentials caught his attention, I personally visited the mansions of several high-ranking officials. Chen Wei was eventually promoted, but the fourth prince took him to the borderlands for military campaigns. He was gone for 2 full years. Letters were scarce, and I spent each day praying at home for his safe return. Later, as Chen Wei climbed higher in rank, the noble women I socialized with grew more prestigious. In public, I could never let my guard down, fearing the slightest misstep would plunge us into an abyss. I couldn't burden my husband at the frontier with my troubles, nor worry my mother with them. I could only swallow the bitterness and endure in silence. When Chen Wei returned to court with the fourth prince, he remarked in surprise, "Miaonyang has been living in comfort at home all this time. Why has she grown so thin?" I replied, "Social obligations are anything but easy." He laughed. Miaonyang, having been pampered by her mother-in-law, took back the household management rights as soon as she entered the door. Much easier than your sister. Explaining women's hardships to a man is like playing the lute to a cow. Since that's the case, why should I endure such suffering in this lifetime? I'll find a suitable husband, no longer chase glory and wealth, and simply enjoy a peaceful life. With this thought, I slowly curtsied and said, "Your fourth highness, may you be well." The fourth prince nodded. "It's late, return now." He lifted his fishing rod and basket, turning to leave with a limp. I'd heard it said, the fastest way to forget someone is to find a new love. Watching the slightly disheveled back of the fourth prince, a thought suddenly occurred to me. In 2 more days, daughters of officials ranked 6th grade and above can voluntarily register for the imperial selection. I recall several princes' consorts were decided during this selection, but for some reason, the fourth prince risked his life to refuse the emperor's arranged marriage. Until his death, his rear courtyard remained empty. I returned to the mansion just in time, having made my decision in the carriage. Once Mother returns from Buddhist prayers, I'll tell her of my plans. Mother studied me intently for a long moment, frowning slightly. Your aunt came to me yesterday, saying Yunyang's dowry was too meager, wanting to borrow some presentable items from our second branch. Thankfully, I didn't agree immediately. Had she selected something, wouldn't that have wronged my child? I rested my head on Mother's knees with a faint smile. In our past life, when my cousin married into a wealthy family, she borrowed several treasures from our second branch, never returned, and Mother swallowed the loss to save face. Now that they're marrying within their social station, it's excessive to still take advantage of our second branch. At dusk, after dining with Mother, I encounter my cousin moving furtively in the covered corridor. Seeing it was me, her pale, pretty face immediately relaxed. "Miaonyang, how do you walk without making a sound? You frightened me terribly." I smiled and asked her, "What were you out doing?" A blush spread across my cousin's face. I met with a friend at Willow Pavilion. We had some conversation. I nodded, knowing I hadn't mistaken the person I saw earlier. Their fate began at Willow Pavilion in their previous life. Now, in this life, Willow Pavilion reunites them. I never expected Chunwei, so consumed by his political ambitions, to be such a refined man. A bitter taste rose in my heart. Just as I was about to excuse myself, my cousin continued, "By the way, my friend mentioned you today." I halted abruptly, a flicker of hope igniting within me. My cousin fixed her gaze on me and said, "That friend mentioned he has a close companion, Su Qiang, the eldest son of the city patrol commander. Tall and sturdy, honest and diligent. He wishes to introduce you to." I let out a cold laugh. The eldest son of the city patrol commander, the man who served Chunwei loyally in my past life, toiling tirelessly only to die tragically on the battlefield, leaving behind no heirs. Why would I remember him? Because every time Chunwei gained power or wealth, he would lament mournfully in my ear. If only old Su were still alive. He followed me devotedly, yet I caused his family line to end, a debt I can never repay in this lifetime. So, in this reborn life, does he plan to compensate him by offering his own wife? My cousin noticed my displeased expression and found it rather unusual. "Are you considering it, Miao Nyang?" "Don't worry. My friend said Su Qiang isn't like other martial men with wandering eyes. He won't fool around. Besides, he's Brother Chen's sworn brother. We definitely won't let him bully you." By the end of her words, her cheeks flushed pink again. I stared at my cousin, somewhat dazed. Men all love beauty. My cousin was born pretty, and today she wore a yellow tsuju robe that accentuated her graceful figure, with her cheeks faintly blushing like crabapple blossoms and her long, thick lashes fluttering as she lowered her gaze. She looked utterly charming, whereas my features are plain, and I often rely on dark, colored robes to command respect from the servants and stewards. Naturally, I appear dull and uninteresting. Perhaps few men would favor me over my cousin. I forced a bitter smile and left without another word. 2 days later, I boarded the carriage to enter the palace for the selection. The hardships I endured in my past life became many of the strengths I rely on in this one. The matrons found no fault in me and hung my identity plaque in the front row. Among the 6 in that row, 3 would later become princes' consorts. Steadying my nerves, I went to speak with them. I engaged them with neither arrogance nor humility, tailoring my words to their interests, and, surprisingly, gained some friendship. By the day of the grand selection, the sisters I had befriended were successively granted imperial marriages by His Majesty. When it was my turn, however, the emperor personally asked the 4th prince, 4th son, "How about making the legitimate daughter of Minister Shun your principal consort?" Fearing the 4th prince would reject the proposal as in my past life, I hurriedly looked up at him, seeing his utterly indifferent gaze turn my way. I quickly blinked, but then I worried he might misunderstand my reluctance to marry him. I had no choice but to repeatedly mouth the words, "I'll marry," with my lips. The 4th prince watched for a long moment and seemed to smile. "Father, your discernment is wise. This son's marriage is entirely at your discretion." Immediately after, I felt multiple gazes fix on me, prickling like needles on my back. It wasn't until His Majesty issued the decree to resolve the situation that I was able to extricate myself. Returning to the palace of gathered elegance, several prospective princes' consorts gathered around to inquire. Upon learning that I had been chosen as the 4th prince's consort, they clung to me, dredging up distant relatives separated by 7 or 8 generations to claim connections. I smiled superficially, knowing their friendliness stemmed only from the 4th prince's physical ailment preventing him from ascending the throne. I couldn't help but recall my previous life marrying Xinwei. At countless banquets and social gatherings, even when humiliated or deliberately slighted, no one ever intervened. I had to force smiles through the indignities. Now, even before marrying the 4th prince, I was already benefiting from his status. My heart felt both bitter and sweet. In this life, both Qinwei and I have made different choices. How he fares hereafter is no longer my concern. I only wish for my family and the fourth prince to be well. That is enough. With the imperial marriage decree issued, the selection concluded, and the court ladies gradually sent home. My family had received the news early, except for my grandmother, who was immobile. Everyone else waited respectfully at the gate to welcome me. My mother beamed with particular joy. A month apart felt like an eternity. The whole family missed you dearly. Hearing this, I looked up. My cousin was nowhere to be seen. Walking into the main hall with Mother, I noticed the undismantled red decorations and suddenly remembered she had already married. Everyone noticed me staring and followed my gaze. Aunt smiled understandingly and warmly explained, "You two grew up together, closer than anyone. Yunyang didn't know you'd entered the palace selection. She kept asking about you even on her wedding return day." I nodded. "I'll invite her over another day." The very next day, she arrived accompanied by Chenwei, dressed as a married woman. Her eyes and brows now carried a knowing grace. My eyes grew warm. I'd long known things could never go back, but seeing it firsthand still stung my heart. "How cruel you are, little sister." She shot me a reproachful glance the moment she entered, sneaking off to the selection without a word, missing even your own sister's wedding. After I foolishly tried matchmaking for you, I lowered my head, sipped tea, and simply smiled. Why speak of uncertain matters? I missed the wedding banquet, so I prepared an extra dowry gift. I hope you'll forgive my absence, sister. My cousin scolded me thoroughly before being called away by my aunt for a conversation. I sat idly for a while, found it dull, and left as well. While cutting through the rockery pond on my way back, Chen Wei suddenly appeared on the path ahead. He looked at me. His silence spoke volumes. Having spent 50 or 60 years together in my past life, even raising a dog would have fostered deep affection. Perhaps he felt some reluctance too, or resented how easily I married another. The fourth prince is of noble status. Stop stirring trouble everywhere. Dragging down your family is one thing, but implicating the prince is far worse. My chaotic thoughts abruptly stilled. So, this is how he sees me. My heart chilled, yet I feigned ignorance. Did you jump out just to say this? Brother-in-law, how absurd. He studied my expression intently. Brother-in-law, are you suggesting my sister? And I follow the example of the Huang and Nuing sisters? I feigned bashful anger, startling him abruptly. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll have your eyes gouged out. I left after my harsh words, even skipping the midday meal. By the time my cousin visited again, 2 months had passed. Chen Wei carefully helped her step over the threshold. The two leaned against each other, full of tender affection. My cousin, blushing, said to us, "We discovered right after returning last time that I'm with child. And today, we came specifically to tell you. You wouldn't believe it. The night Shen Lang heard the happy news, he was so overjoyed he couldn't sleep and came up with 3 or 4 fine names for the baby right away." Chen Wei nodded with a smile and took over. "If it's a girl, we'll name her Chen Rui." The character Rui signifies the budding of plants, full of vitality. If it's a boy, he'll be Chen Jinghe, inspired by spring harmony and bright scenery from a record of Yayang Tower, symbolizing a peaceful life and a bright future. Hearing this, I drifted into a daze, thinking of the child Chen Wei and I once had in my past life. It wasn't until guests at the full moon banquet asked that he casually named the child Qinyong. In the capital's ordinary households, the name Qinyong was as common as dirt, utterly unremarkable. But the child he had with his beloved not only carried a name of profound poetry, but also one pleasing to the ear. Back then, I never truly had his heart, so I failed to see it clearly. Only now do I realize that love and its absence are so glaringly obvious. Amid the laughter and chatter, Chen Wei suddenly turned to me. Yunyang mentioned there's a highly talented younger sister at home. What do you think of the 2 names we've chosen for our child? All eyes turned toward me. My cousin's eyes lit up. She immediately forgot her delicate condition and rushed over to me, acting foolishly. Miao Nyang, you're the most learned. I want to hear your opinion." I was taken aback. Before I could even react, Chunwei swept her into his arms, as if facing a great threat. He eyed me warily. Mind your words, and watch your health, I scoffed, finding him utterly ridiculous. Are you two truly so clueless? Even the child's grandfather has no say in this matter. Yet you ask me, the aunt. For a moment, silence fell over the entire room. The aunt awkwardly chuckled a few times, forcibly changing the subject. Let's talk about Miao Nyang's wedding instead. With summer approaching, I wonder if wearing such heavy ceremonial robes will ruin her makeup. The cousin covered her mouth in surprise. Absolutely, absolutely, though it wasn't hot on my wedding day. I cried so much from missing my family that my makeup ran. And my brother-in-law teased me for ages. Chunwei curled his finger and gently booped her nose, smiling adoringly. I rested my chin in my hand and turned to look outside the hall. The crabapple branches, 3 feet above the wall, were laden with pink blossoms. By the time the petals scatter and fall, I'll be married. A royal wedding, handled by the Ministry of Rights, follows a different protocol than commoners. Considering my family's long residence in the capital and numerous relatives, the ministry officials arranged banquets on both sides. On the wedding day, Chen Wei and his wife were also expected to attend. My cousin had wanted to chat with me, but the banquet hall was packed to the brim. Even the maids and matrons attending my chamber were swarming about. Fearing the crowd might jostle her pregnancy, she sent a playful message instead. I ought to be happy for your lofty marriage, sister, but seeing distant relatives who never bother with us before suddenly show up, I can't help feeling irritated. I shook my head with a light laugh. Yet even that slight tilt of my head drew gasps of alarm from those behind me. Hiss, the prince's consort's phoenix crown, forged of solid gold and studded with jewels, weighed heavily on my shoulders and neck, leaving me tense and unable to relax. The auspicious hour for the groom's procession was set at dusk. The 4th prince declined other suggestions, dismounted from his steed, and took hold of the other end of the hydrangea silk ball. We bowed to heaven and earth, then entered the bridal chamber. I sat at the edge of the bed, waiting until night had fully fallen when the 4th prince finally arrived, smelling strongly of wine. Everyone else, leave. Then, the red bridal veil was lifted, suddenly meeting his narrow, long eyes. I felt a bit embarrassed. Later, when it came time for marital duties, I thought of his physical ailment and kindly went to assist him. Unexpectedly, it provoked his anger. This prince merely has difficulty walking, but my legs are not broken. You're too courteous, Miao Nyang, I intended to explain, but the words were shattered by his impact before they left my lips. Water was called for 3 times during the night. The next day, under the blazing sun, we finally entered the palace to express gratitude. The emperor was handling state affairs and, without even looking up as he spoke to us, waved us away. The empress, not being the 4th prince's birth mother, merely exchanged a few formal pleasantries before serving tea to signal our dismissal. On the way back, we sat facing each other. The 4th prince's expression was unusually placid, as if accustomed to such treatment. It was then I understood why someone of his noble status would meet a sorrowful end. Feeling pity for this prince, he suddenly spoke, his voice tinged with a hint of hoarseness. I smiled gently. You misread me. As the daughter of a minor official, I can only envy your highness. He averted his gaze and fell silent. The carriage grew terrifyingly quiet. After a moment's thought, I abruptly brought up the selection ceremony that day. If I hadn't begged your highness so desperately, whom would you have chosen? The 4th prince paused briefly before answering. This prince had no wish to choose anyone. I nodded and didn't press further. Instead, I blinked and pleaded with him. For the 3rd day bridal return, please accompany me, your highness. The 4th prince gave a soft hum of agreement before closing his eyes. Having achieved my goal, I wisely kept quiet. The clop of hooves echoed as the carriage rounded a corner, the alley's crosswind lifting the curtain. Suddenly, I locked eyes with an old acquaintance. Both of us startled. My carriage headed west, while he went south. Today, we chanced upon one final meeting. hereafter drifting apart. My family had long prepared for the homecoming banquet. Unfortunately, my cousin had suffered a pregnancy scare 2 days prior and was confined to bed rest. Unable to go out, hearing Aunt speak of this, I grew secretly suspicious. Chen Wei's birth mother was still alive, so my cousin naturally wouldn't suffer under a stepmother's mistreatment. Though Chen Fei was lustful, his character was passable enough that he wouldn't trouble his pregnant daughter-in-law. Could it be Chen Wei? If you're unwell, return home early. Invite your mother and the others to our residence another day. The fourth prince's concern made me chuckle involuntarily. Enough. This is another family's affair after all. I no longer have the right to interfere. Better to focus on the future, barring unforeseen events. The third prince will likely ascend the throne, but I've heard there's some private friction between the third prince and my husband. If it can't be resolved, we'll have to seek alternative paths. After sitting briefly at my parental home, I truly felt somewhat fatigued. I agreed with my mother. In a few days, I'd bring the women of the household to the fourth prince's residence to familiarize them. But whether she didn't take it seriously or had other considerations, she never came. Coincidentally, the fourth prince had entrusted me with managing the household after our marriage. And with news of the emperor's recent illness, several capable princes were growing restless. There truly was no time to invite mother over for a visit. Sometimes, rubbing my sore wrist, I couldn't help but sigh. What a life of toil. But busy as I was, I still had moments to spare for a cup of tea. Unlike the fourth prince, who was entrusted with major responsibilities right after marriage, worked non-stop for months, and now leads troops to the border for battle. Compared to that, I suppose I should count myself fortunate. Just as I was about to stroll in the garden, a maid suddenly came to report, "Your ladyship, someone outside claims to be your cousin and wishes to ask a favor." Chen Wei prompted this visit. She pouted and complained. It's all because of his superior, mediocre himself, yet insists on holding subordinates back. My husband has had his merits stolen twice now. Miao Nyang, you must help me. Then, she shot me a glare. You used to beg me for things, but now that you've married up to the fourth prince, I'm the one coming to you. Had I known, I wouldn't have accepted your brother-in-law's proposal and would have joined the palace election with you. I cautioned her. Mind your words. She glanced around, utterly unconcerned. I invited her to stay for a meal at the manor. Since the fourth prince wouldn't return at noon, I sent someone to deliver his lunch. Knowing his shortage of capable aides, I took the opportunity to recommend Chen Wei to him. My cousin, aware I had helped, joyfully sent me a basket of sour plums. Her morning sickness was severe during pregnancy, and she relied on these to stimulate her appetite 3 times a day. I took just a tiny bite of the plum flesh, so sour that I gulped down 3 cups of tea. Just like in my past life, Chen Wei was to follow the fourth prince to the border for war. I prepared the fourth prince's daily necessities in advance and also secured plenty of exchangeable banknotes. He noticed it all but said nothing. Only at night did he exert himself fiercely. At the very end, he finally said, "You are truly remarkable." On the eve of the army's departure, the gatekeeper handed me a letter. Unfolding, it revealed Chen Wei's handwritten words. "My mother is rigid and strict. Yun Yang is stubborn yet fragile. Fearing I may not return from tomorrow's distant journey, I humbly beg your ladyship to care for my wife and child. I shall repay this kindness even in the afterlife." I simply smiled and wrote back, "Miao Nyang is hardly fit for such a heavy responsibility. If you have concerns, General, why not arrange for my sister to stay with the Shen family?" The messenger returned and whispered to me, the general's wife had another argument with him, and it agitated her pregnancy. It seems she doesn't want him to leave the capital. I sighed softly. Chen Wei is so eager for military glory that he's disregarding even his own cousin's wishes. Now that the die is cast, if Chen Wei doesn't depart tomorrow, he'll be branded a deserter with no place left for him in the capital. As July's heat fades, September brings the need for warmer clothes. The fourth prince arrived at the border just during the autumn harvest, and the Rongdi tribes marched south to plunder grain, leading to frequent clashes between the armies. In my past life, I once heard Chinwei say, "The fourth prince never took so much as a needle from the people, yet the court shortchanged us so severely that we'd go hungry even after winning battles." To ensure the soldiers fighting the Rongdi had full stomachs, and to ease the fourth prince's logistical worries, I had the estate stewards hire several security escort agencies to establish an unimpeded grain supply route. Half a month later, a courier delivered a family letter. I took it but froze in surprise. Unfolding it, my eyes involuntarily curved into a smile. Some people speak sparingly with their mouths, but pour endlessly onto paper. From then on, every fortnight, a thick family letter would arrive. By year's end, I even received a red fox pelt he hunted himself, crafted by a skilled matron of the manor into an elegant cloak collar, looking utterly luxurious. Just as I was about to try it on, news suddenly came of my cousin's difficult childbirth. For women, giving birth has always been a perilous journey through the gates of hell. When I rushed over, I heard my aunt weeping. "Your cousin is so unfortunate. On this freezing cold day, her wretched mother-in-law wouldn't even provide a basin of charcoal. The room was icy cold, and your cousin slipped on the frost." Immediately seeing blood, I gasped sharply, quickly sending someone to fetch the imperial physician from the palace and retrieving a century-old ginseng from the storeroom. My aunt wept bitterly at the sight. Later, when the imperial physician arrived, he shook his head and sighed. "The mother, too, has lost the will to live. Unless her heart is unburdened, not even a celestial immortal could save her." Auntie stamped her foot in fury, cursing Chenwei's mother before turning her ire on Chenwei himself. When he sought to marry our Yunyang, Chenwei made grand promises, vowing to protect our gentle, indecisive girl at every turn. Yet now he's abandoned her, driving our Yunyang to despair. My heart churned with conflicting emotions. For a moment, I didn't know whether to thank Chenwei for sparing me his hand, or to hate him for it. Relatives took turns pleading, but none could sway my cousin to choose life. As the imperial physician asked whether to save the mother or the child, I raised my voice and cut in. "The Chen family will surely choose the child. Chenwei's mother has long disapproved of my cousin. Once she dies, she'll have Chen Wei marry her niece. With a new wife, he'll forget his departed one, and I fear my poor nephew will be raised to call another mother." Andy stared at me, shocked, while others frowned deeply. The imperial physician, seasoned by years of service in the palace, had seen it all. The elder stroked his beard in agreement with me. "Since we must save the child, this old man shall prescribe a potent dose." As soon as he finished speaking, a cry of alarm came from the delivery room. No, my cousin was so frightened that she suddenly no longer wished to die. After a full day and night, she gave birth to a baby boy whose cries sounded like mewling. I wrote of this matter in a letter, and the fourth prince replied after reading it, "When you give birth in the future, I shall not leave your side for a moment." On a spring day of the new year, the fourth prince led troops from Hanshua Prefecture, appointed Chen Wei as general of the Agile Cavalry, marched west to attack the Rongdi tribes, and deployed other generals to flank from the north and south, striking directly at their heart. This battle was a great victory, reclaiming lost territories, capturing thousands of Rongdi soldiers, seizing 100,000 head of livestock, and driving away the kings of two enemy forces. Chen Wei was promoted to general of chariots for his merits, and two other generals were ennobled as marquises. The fourth prince, for his exemplary leadership, was also enfeoffed by His Majesty as a first-rank prince with the title Rong. Among all the imperial princes, the fourth prince was the first to attain the rank of prince, but due to his physical ailment, he was ineligible for the throne, so he attracted more allies than enemies. Yet my past experiences taught me that the brighter the flames and blossoms, the more cautiously one must tread. I always referred to the fourth prince. No, I should now call him Prince Rong. I only shared good news with him, never troubles, sending supplies and messages monthly via grain transport merchants. That autumn, Chen Wei achieved an extraordinary feat. He eliminated over 3 elite Rongdi soldiers and scouts, captured more than 1,000,000 horses, cattle, and sheep, and returned victorious with minimal losses to his troops, earning him the title Marquis of Western Pacification. In the previous life, his marquis yielded only 100 households. This time, it granted him 800 households. My judgment was never wrong. He was capable, but that was his limit. Qinwei, ambitious and glory-seeking, defied orders by building a bridge over the river for a surprise attack. Prince Rong, valuing his merits over faults, concealed this disobedience and still ennobled him. But no matter what, Chen Wei would never be reinstated. The military most abhors disobedience to orders. The following spring, the prince ordered several generals to sout together and petitioned the emperor to appoint 2 grand generals to advance from the right rear, jointly attacking the Rongdi tribes. In previous years, the Rongdi tribes always raided in autumn and rested in spring. This time, the prince went against the norm, launching a surprise attack on the enemy camp that caught the Rongdi king completely off guard. They captured over a dozen minor chieftains and tens of thousands of men and women, along with countless cattle, horses, and sheep. Thus, the prince returned triumphant half a year earlier than in his previous life. The emperor dispatched envoys to await them at the border, reclaiming the prince's and all the generals' military authority before ordering the army to return to the capital. After more than a month, I finally saw the prince again, now dark and gaunt. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. At night, fierce winds howled, shaking the red candles wildly. After the storm of passion subsided, the air was thick with an intimate, suggestive atmosphere. Catching his breath, he whispered, "There will be no major events for the next 2 or 3 years. Give me a child," thinking of the endless troubles that would arise over the next 2 years. I agreed wholeheartedly. This matter brooks no delay. As passion reignited here, a storm was brewing in the Marquis of Western Pacification's residence. Chen Wei had received numerous letters from home this year, yet upon opening them, he found only his mother's reproaches or his wife's complaints. How laughable that his family showed so little care for someone risking life and limb abroad. Returning home to find not a single lamp lit for him in any courtyard felt bitterly ironic. He went first to his own courtyard and knocked on his wife's door. "Yunyang, I'm home." Still, no answer came from within. Chen Wei pushed the door open and saw a shadowy figure sitting up on the bed, his heart suddenly softening. "You've suffered. Yunyang, where is our child? Let me see him." Unfortunately, these words touched precisely upon Yunyang's rawest nerve. She snatched up a wooden pillow and hurled it at him, screaming hysterically, "You heartless bastard who abandoned his wife and child. So you finally remember to come home? Do you have any idea how your mother treated me? Every time I wrote to you, begging you to intervene and keep her in check, you never cared. You let her trample all over me, tormenting me until my child was born prematurely. Now, I ask you just one thing. Who matters more, your mother or me?" Chen Wei's anger flared up abruptly, then slowly died down. His throat tightened. He couldn't understand. Why was everything fine when I was away for 2 years in the past life? This time, I was only gone for a little over a year, yet things have already spiraled beyond repair. Chen Wei said hoarsely, "After all, she is my birth mother." Yunyang sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "Back then, you promised to protect me in every way. I foolishly believed you, and now I've ended up like this. If it weren't for my sister's unwavering support, I'd already be lying in a lonely grave." At that moment, Chen Wei also thought of his capable wife from his past life, of Prince Rong hunting red foxes across the vast snowy borderlands, and of the happy, harmonious family they once had. A pang of pain pierced my heart once more. After what felt like an eternity, he heard his own bitter voice ask, "Then what do you want me to do?" Yunyang repeated the words her birth mother had drilled into her. Either establish a separate household and limit contact, or seek a divorce. Chen Wei's temple veins bulged as he slammed his palm on the table. "Impossible. Don't even think about it. I just earned promotion and a title. How would it look to abandon my own parents now? Have you lost your mind? Yoon-young, already seething with pent-up anger, shrieked sharply, then we'll divorce. The day after the prince returned, I had barely struggled out of bed when someone from my family came to inform me, Your ladyship, the eldest young miss is demanding a divorce from your son-in-law. Please come quickly. My heart sank, bewildered by this sudden drama. After a hasty toilette, I hurried to the Shen residence. There I saw my cousin sitting sideways in the guest seat, her face ashen, chin wasted nearby, cradling their 1-year-old child who couldn't yet walk, his face so dark it seemed to drip with gloom. When my aunt saw me arrive, she looked as if she'd seen a living Buddha. Your ladyship, please help me persuade Yoon-young. She's acting possessed. No reasoning gets through to her. After enduring so much hardship in the Chin family, just when bitterness should turn to sweetness, she insists on demanding a divorce. My cousin silently wept while Chen Wei frowned in silence. I knew reasoning with my cousin would be futile, so I turned to Chen Wei. Have you forgotten what you promised when you married her? Chen Wei opened his mouth, then formed a bitter smile. But she wants to confront my mother, my own mother. I froze momentarily. A strange sense of relief washed over me. So, you'll let your mother keep abusing my sister? Chen Wei suddenly raised his bloodshot eyes and shouted at me uncontrollably. Then tell me what to do. You're so clever. You must know how to balance things between them. Everyone in the room was startled by his outburst. My cousin immediately covered her face and broke down sobbing. Yes, it's all my fault for being too foolish, unable to handle my own mother-in-law. I might as well be dead. Chen Wei looked at her, his eyes turning cold. I thought I must have seen wrong. When I glanced again, I accidentally caught a glimpse of emotion in his eyes. Princess, I don't understand the affairs of the inner household. Please give us some advice. He certainly knows how to put me to work. I had no intention of getting involved, but seeing the earnest hope in my family's eyes, I eventually devised a less than ideal solution. Convert the marquee manor bestowed by the emperor into a 4-courtyard layout. Let Chen's mother and my cousin each choose a corner, with the central area left as neutral ground. This way, my cousin was relieved, but Chen Wei found himself stuck in the middle, pleasing neither side. After sorting out their messy affairs, I returned to the prince's manor and shared it as casual conversation, never expecting the prince to grow jealous. The princess seems quite attentive to this Chen Wei. I merely despise his indecisiveness. Unlike your highness, who is both wise and mighty, smooth talker. The prince gave a light reprimand and lifted his teacup. The cup obscured most of his face, leaving only those meaningful eyes slanting toward me. The soldiers who returned victorious from battle had all been rewarded one after another. The prince was already a first-rank imperial kinsman and held key positions at court. The emperor, having no higher honors to bestow, sent several treasures from his private treasury along with 4 beauties. I laughed coldly to myself. For the first time, I did not go to the study to call the prince for the meal. After I finished eating and wiped my mouth, he arrived uninvited. This prince is hungry. I rose and summoned the servants. Prepare some dishes for his highness. The prince's brow relaxed slightly, though his eyes still held some confusion. But he had always been a man of few words. Only at night, when passion overwhelmed restraint, would he whisper a few tender phrases. Today, why did you not come for me? Worn down by his persistence, I confessed honestly, Your Highness is blessed. Father Emperor has sent 4 young beauties to our household. It was meant as a casual tease, yet the prince's eyes abruptly reddened. He buried his face against my collarbone, his voice laced with loathing. I knew it. None of them wish me well, seeing how devoted we are as husband and wife. They deliberately sent someone to sow discord between us. If you don't trust me, I understand, but there are some words I only wish to speak to you. To me, women are too fragile and foolish, only bringing more trouble to one already trapped in adversity. Thus, I've always kept my distance from them, never imagining in this lifetime I would have a wife and child. But Miaonyang is different. along with his words fell two streams of warmth against my collarbone. I held my breath in astonishment. Was he crying? Unbelievable. Gently, I brushed my fingers over his feverish eyelids and teased in a playful tone. I've never seen a man cry before. Lift your head, Your Highness. Let me have a good look. Ah, I pushed too far and got bitten for it. Quickly, I wrapped one arm around his waist while using the other to soothingly stroke his hair. There, don't be afraid. As long as the prince remains faithful, I will always treat you well. Perhaps in this second life, both Chinwei and I are here to mend the regrets of our past lives. He could not win my cousin's heart, and I too developed feelings for another. What the future holds remains unknown. I only feel that at this very moment, my heart is at peace. Extra. After Chinwei was enfeoffed as a marquis, he requested an imperial mandate for my cousin. The emperor granted it. My cousin was overjoyed and often came to the prince's residence to chat with me. On one occasion, she seemed particularly awkward. After repeated questioning, she finally said, "It's all because of your brother. In law, everyone who fought alongside him has been promoted. Even his former subordinates now outrank him. I've wanted to ask for your help several times, but he refuses to say anything and even threatened me not to tell you. It's infuriating." I smiled and said, "Perhaps there are hidden reasons." My cousin set down her teacup and exclaimed, "What hidden reasons? Someone must have stolen his credit. Chen Wei is your brother. In law, Miao Nyang, you must help us. Brother, in law doesn't seem like the flexible type. Sister, you should go back first and get the full story before anything else. We're family, yet you keep making excuses when I ask for a simple favor. The prince holds high status. Investigating something would just take a word from him. What kind of princess are you? Being so ineffective?" Her words made me lose all desire to drink my tea. The blue and white porcelain cup clinked sharply as I set it down. My expression darkened as I looked at her. "In that case, I have nothing more to say. Madam Marquis of Western Pacification, you may leave." My cousin was terrified, quickly standing up with tears in her eyes, not daring to speak. I don't know what drama she stirred up after returning home, but her family sent for me to mediate. Even our pair of children could not compare. When the gatekeeper came to announce them, I was sitting by the bed, feeding medicine to the prince. He's never been one to fall ill, but once he caught this cold, his symptoms were far worse than anyone else's. Cough, cough. Seeing him cough until his fair face flushed crimson, my heart ached too much to leave. I just waved my hand. "I can't leave the prince's side right now. Tell them I'm unavailable." After dismissing the gatekeeper, I was taken aback when the prince mentioned Chinwei. He appears capable, but deep down he's restless and ambitious. That single remark sealed Chen Wei's fate in officialdom. From then on, his annual evaluations were consistently mediocre, and his salary was repeatedly cut, coupled with the fact that no one in the Marquis household was skilled in management. It eventually became nothing but a hollow shell of former glory. After Chen Wei threatened to divorce her that day, my cousin never dared mention separation again. Gradually, they became known throughout the capital as a bitterly unhappy couple. I'd heard they argued frequently, but never expected them to brawl at my son's full-month banquet. My cousin is delicate. How could she match a military man like him? I quickly ordered the guards to restrain Chinwei. Pinned forcefully to the ground, he turned his head toward me with a look of grievance and resentment. The prince snorted coldly beside me. The following month, Chinwei was transferred to Yenzhou, 1,000 miles away. The Yan region was vast and sparsely populated, with scarce resources. Chinwei took up his post alone and never returned. For half a year, no letters came home, and my cousin even suspected he had died. Yet at year's end, I received a sable fur, accompanied by a note. 1,000 joys and sorrows fade like dreams. 2 lifetimes of absurdity.